Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to yet another episode. Even in the off season, we're still doing this. A Third Degree, the podcast. This one is number 288. Dan Crooke not with us tonight. His lovely Mrs. Dan Crooke made dinner plans, so they're off having fun doing that. And, you know, I get it. And so there he is, your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, editor, founder of thirddegree.net, and the original soccer influencer himself, Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Peter, thanks for being here, man. I'm glad you didn't stand me up. I would have been lonely by myself.
I'm not going anywhere, mister. All right, so we're recording this just minutes after the completion of USA 1, Jamaica 0. It was one of those games, Buzz. You know what I mean by that? One of those U.S. performances?
Yeah, it looked like, a CONCACAF road qualifier where they've let the grass grow thick and slowed the game way down, and the field was terrible. And which, by the way, is weird to me since Jamaica's, generally speaking, a very fast vertical team, historically speaking. So why they would want a slow field, I don't really know.
Andy Swift, my co-host, who has been to that stadium more times than he can count, reports back to me that it is because of the rain, and more rain. And apparently it rained its ass off in Jamaica today. And because of how the weather is there, they can't cut it as short as you think they would. And that's why it plays like a damp sponge. Because is it just me, or does it look like nobody's even able to break into a full sprint?
No, everybody looks slow. The ball doesn't release. Everyone looks like they're plodding, like they're running an ankle deep muck, which is essentially what they're doing. So it really plays havoc with the game. It's just, without knowing anything about the context that you provided with Andy and the rain, it's like, how does that not a team that at some point has put in like a turf surface and try to take advantage of the fact that like the thing they have over everybody is this verticality that they usually are so good at.
They should get the old NASL flat carpet turf. They used to put in like soccer stadium, like arenas and stuff, and just track meet turf, old AstroTurf. That would be awesome. But how about it? How about the good old Dallas kid? Okay, El Paso kid, the Texan, Ricardo Pappy, hitting a banger to open the game.
Yeah, that's classic Pappy goal. By the way, that game had FC Dallas all over it. I mean, between Tessman and McKinney in the lineup, and then Richards on the bench, and Zendejas coming off the bench, and Tanner in the line. Yeah, I mean, just so much Dallas on the field. That's always so much fun. But yeah, I mean, Ricardo Pappy does what Ricardo Pappy does, which is score goals. And he doesn't do a whole lot of anything else, but he scores goals, man.
I don't know how that ball went in the net, because I would have bet $1,000 when it was halfway there it was going wide. And then the way it came off the post didn't look like it was going to go back in the net either.
Yeah, I mean, just it must have had a little bit of swerve on it or something, or the field took just enough steam out of it. I don't know.
It had a little peppy on it.
Little spice, little peppy. Yeah.
Tanner had a first half nightmare.
He got better though.
He did.
Yeah, he got better. He got more comfortable. I mean, first ever start for the national team, so you have to. I'm sure he was quaking in his boots on some level, but he got better as the game went on and started to assert himself a little bit. And so overall, I think at the end of the day, he was fine. At that point, you're just wanting him to fill in for the usual person and do a decent enough job to keep himself in the mix, which I think he did.
I'm convinced coaching Jamaica is going to kill Steve McLaren.
It might, man. He was throwing water bottles and all kinds of.
I think that's going to be the end of Steve McLaren. I'm pretty sure of it. All right,
I enjoyed, by the way, that when Pappy scored, like all the accounts lit up with trains, MLS and
God, that has got to be such a cool feeling knowing that you started that.
I mean, it is, but it also is slightly a bummer that my greatest contribution to soccer culture is one guy's nickname. That's all I got. But at least I got that. At least I got the one thing.
You're selling yourself short, Buzz, but I understand where you're coming from. Well, all right. So they play again, I guess, was it Monday or Tuesday? One of those, up in St. Louis. So
my brain's saying Monday, but don't quote me on that.
We'll see where that goes. All right. Let's do some other stuff. And because FC Dallas isn't the number one running story right now, I'm going to push that to a little bit later. I want to talk about some of these other things.
Yeah.
First off, congratulations to North Texas SC as they won the MLS Next Pro Championship and did so in style up in Frisco in front of what did they end up saying? 7,200 people?
Yeah, 7,000 something. I don't remember the exact number, but it was the record for MLS Next Pro final record. So that's very cool.
Well, how many MLS Next Pro finals have they had?
3.
Has there already been 3 seasons of MLS Next Pro?
Yeah, I mean, Dallas was in USL 1 for 2 years, I think, right? 19 and 20, and then 21, and then 3 and 3, I think.
Okay.
Oh, man. Again, I didn't look that up, so.
Well, anyway, congratulations to them. That's great. I don't know if it's funny or cool that the only trophies this club has ever won is from their second tier team.
League titles. Yeah, league titles. Yeah.
League title. Yes.
They got a cup and a shield. And
you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, the takeaway, well, first, let's talk about the game a little bit. Dallas, North Texas was a little flat, and they gave up an early goal and then another one in the first half, and then rebounded big time in the second half. Some great credit to Michel for his great coaching that they rebounded and found a way, and they ended up winning 3-2, with some terrific goals. And our photographer, Daniel McCullough, has a crystal shot of the behind the heel flick for the game winner. Just a fun game, a great night up there with not too hot weather. The sun had already gotten down, and we're not used to being able to be actually chilly in the stadium. And the people all rushed the field, that spurred on mostly by the academy kids who were all there that led the way. But then they had to clear the field for the celebration afterwards. And a little bit weird watching Dan and Clark down there lift that trophy, but the big takeaway is going to be how ecstatic they were and how much they wanted to celebrate that thing. Renewing probably for them their doubling down idea on let's swing back towards the academy a little bit that we got away from. So I think it's going to reinforce that idea.
I know you got asked this a lot in the aftermath of the game. How many of those kids or young men that were in that game do you think are likely to end up making appearances for the senior team next year?
Well, that depends a little bit on whether you count guys that are already under contract. One of the reasons why that team is really good is because of the fact that Nico Esteves had signed these older players. They kicked down a fair number of FC Dallas contracted players down there. So like Enes Solly played the whole season down there. Carl Sante played the bulk of it down there. Those guys are both signed to the first team. Nolan Norris, when he was in town, played down there. Endele played after they got, some players healthy. In his case, notably Tuamasi, he played down there. Thomas Pandeka is the first team player. He played the whole season down there. So they brought down Logan Farrington for the playoffs. So like, if you count all those guys as already being part of the first team, they don't really fall into the answer to this question. The real answer is Diego Garcia, who some people think might be the most talented player to ever come through that club. I think that may be a little bit of a stretch because Ricardo Pappy is really amazing, but that just tells you where some people in the organization think his talent level is. And then after that, it gets to be kind of a crapshoot. Michael Collodi was the league's keeper of the year, but we all know that he's not 6 foot is a generous measurement on him, and that's his hurdle to get over. You have a couple of center backs that are all interesting out of college, but all have one weakness or another. You have Pedrinho, who was their leading scorer and assister all year, but then had an atrocious West final and an atrocious Cup final, except that he got the game winner. And that's kind of the story with him, is that he can be really inconsistent and drift in and out and yet have these magical moments where he's a really talented player. So, and the short answer, I think, is probably just one, Diego Garcia. But there's a couple other guys that are interesting. And sometimes this club makes decisions I don't 100% always see coming or agree with these days. So, you could probably, I think I listed on my end of season predictions 5 guys that were possible in terms of signing. But the one I think is by far most likely is Diego Garcia, who's the 18-year-old central midfielder and their best player.
Yeah, and I think it's important that people, if for those who don't watch North Texas or much MLS Next Pro there is a significant gap between it and the MLS level. It's not like the difference. I mean, there's a gap between the championship and the Premier League, and there is, and it is just really important to recognize that it's not an easy transition from one to the other. So a kid that dominates in MLS Next Pro isn't necessarily going to end up being a good player even in MLS. It's just that's how big of a gap it is.
Yeah, matter of fact, like if you're not the best player at that team and dominating the whole season, you could probably forget about getting a contract, because you can even look at a guy like Tark Scott, who was their co-leading scorer all year, who is a homegrown and has been with FC Dallas a fair bit. He can't get a sniff of a game at FC Dallas. It is a big leap. It's why we see guys that get these homegrown deals over the last 5 or 6 years. We see them get loans to USL Championship sides, and it doesn't matter how good you are. FC Dallas likes to do those. I mean, Jesus Ferreira did one of those loans. Brandon Cervania did one of those loans. Lots of guys that have come through the club have taken an intermediate step to a USL Championship side. And so these guys that are homegrowns or guys that might be signed at 18 that are dominating that level, or even guys under contract, like Enes Saleh played the whole season down there, and he's really hit or miss. Like, what are you going to bring him up and just have him sit at FC Dallas next year and do 0 games because he can't get off the bench? Maybe there's something intermediate for him, because you're correct, Peter. It is a huge step. You just don't see guys leap across and go from 100% for North Texas to 100% playing every game for FC Dallas. It just doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah. And I just think a lot of people sometimes don't necessarily understand how big of a leap it is between the two. I mean, the leap between USL Championship and MLS is pretty sizable, but this is a whole next level thing. So
think about how rare it is that we see a USL Championship guy jump up and become a big time player for any MLS team. It's not impossible,
right?
Certainly, Sebastian Ibeagha is a guy that was a lock starter for USL Championship teams, and then was mostly a backup when he came to MLS until he came to FC Dallas. So it is a huge leap, and there's another league at that level, USL 1, that North Texas used to play in, that was a smaller gap. Because it has players that are playing up into their 30s, whereas pretty much blanket MLS Next Pro, every team in MLS treats that as a U23 team, or worse, or a U20 team, or almost even half academy. So the leap can be huge, and maybe there's more benefit to be had if they actually, could play. Like, I think it was a better benefit for North Texas to play in the old league because of that, right? I think they don't get enough development. And one of the reasons why they steamrolled the league this year was because they brought down all these first team players and played them there full time. And so they had a bunch of experience and a bunch of older guys, and they just wrecked that league.
Well, congratulations. It's a cool deal it's fun to win, isn't it, Buzz?
Oh, yeah.
How was the crowd?
Great. When you put 7,000 people in there and you limit it to one side of the stadium, I don't even mean like half. I mean like 1/4 of the stadium, basically. That side was about 75% full. And everyone was into it. They were cheering. They were and when you get a comeback, that it really enlivens the crowd. And it was a lot of fun. Yeah. I mean, it was a legit 7,000. I don't have any complaints about that number. That really was pretty much what it was. So it's exciting.
Well, very good. Congratulations to the club on winning a trophy. Good stuff. Related, we talked about USLC, the championship, which is second tier.
Yep.
And this is good timing to talk about this, because I think it's Tuesday next week.
Yeah.
The official press conference of the announcement that a USLC team will be launched in Garland in 2027 is coming. And I think this is really interesting, because when I heard this, and you and I have been talking about it, and we've been hearing this noise for a while, I stopped and I started making a list of all the professional soccer teams now in the North Texas area. And it's like, there's like 7 there's 7 official either active or soon to be active clubs, and at least 2 other, in theory, projects that may be out there.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to me how it feels like we've gone from 1 to 100 in the span of just a couple of years.
Yeah. You could say since MLS started, but it's not even that. It's less than that. It's like inside the last 6 or 7 years. Vaqueros have been around a little longer than that. And Denton maybe is getting close to that, if not a little bit longer. But there's another team coming at that level. And we've seen other clubs come and go at that level already. There's 2 indoor teams that seem to be chugging along at a fairly consistent rate of fielding a team. A lot of the same players can cross over between those 2 groups. But then we saw Dallas Trinity come in, and now we're seeing a USL 1 team, which is the same tier as North Texas, that's going to come to Texoma. Not super close, but I count that as part of the DFW area. And now we're going to have this USL Championship team in Garland. And you and I both know of at least 2 other USL pipe dreams or projects, or whatever you want to call them, one of which is Donnie Nelson's holding of the Austin Bold rights that are still out there in some level of oblivion or not. So, I mean, I already was beginning to wonder if there was not enough soccer talent to fill all these teams just in the broader United States, let alone like in Dallas, where there's now going to be, a second tier team like smack in the backyard of FC Dallas. It's crazy.
It is really nuts to think how this is all played out. And it does beg the question, it's a pressure test of how much this region is interested in soccer and whether or not non-major league, and I don't mean MLS specifically, but lower divisions soccer is something this marketplace can support. And as they all begin to collide into each other for the entertainment dollar, is there really an appetite? And I got to be honest, I don't know if there is.
Yeah, it's a lot. Those small MPSL teams are really going to have to try and even you can include the indoor teams in the same sort of broad category of where they are in terms of, in my perspective, financially speaking. Those clubs are really going to have to focus on sort of a local, minor league semi-pro kind of vibe and really get in bed with their small communities if they're going to make waves. That's something that those teams that are done successfully do. And Hitch has got a few of those around the country. Michael Hitchcock does, and he's involved in most of these. But it'll be a really interesting question. It might actually benefit them in a way if MLS does flip the calendar, because then they'll be playing in the summer when no one else is playing, which will be somewhat more interesting. But that's a big long-term question. If we end up with, above those local teams, if you end up with an MLS team, a USL team, a women's technically first division team, and then another third division team, all sort of in the area vying for your soccer attention, you might wear the audience out really quick. I mean, it's going to be a harsh climate of survival for all these teams with this much competition, to be honest.
What do you think about the location?
I'm not particularly all that familiar with that specific sort of area of town that it seems the team's going to be.
It's Firewheel, essentially, is where it appears to be.
Right.
And because I know this question is getting asked a lot, they're not going to play in a high school stadium. They're building a stadium with the city of Garland.
Yeah, I don't know that that's been officially confirmed, but that's the rumor that they're doing something with Garland. And certainly, like at the press conference, in addition to the owners of the team, you're going to have the mayor and you're going to have a bunch of city council people. And we all know that these things don't work without revenue control. And so the proper stadium situation, and more than likely your own stadium situation, is absolutely crucial to this working at all. If you can't control those flows, you're not going to survive. And you can look at the other USL teams that are folding or moving. And it's almost always because of their stadium situation. Like Memphis just transferred their franchise to is it Santa Barbara? Is that who it is? Yeah. Because they couldn't get revenue control of a venue in Memphis. Northern Colorado Hailstorm is going under because they are playing in a minor league park, and I think weren't the primary tenants of as well. So it's like, that's what happened in with Donnie Nelson's thing. He was involved with that thing that was going down in Keller that fell apart when that guy that was trumpeting that thing lost politically. And so he's adrift, attempting to find anything. And you can look at the way the Vaqueros have drifted from stadium to stadium to stadium over there in Fort Worth, trying to find the proper, revenue set up for them. You have to wonder with the, I'm not deeply cognizant of Fort Worth politics, but I believe something is finally happening with the old Cats baseball stadium. And so maybe west side of town, that's an opportunity. You can look at the way North Texas is and FC Dallas are apparently getting involved with that thing down in Mansfield to give themselves better revenue control for North Texas. So you know what matters. And so you look at Dallas Trinity now in the Cotton Bowl already apparently, searching around for options.
They've got to.
Except that they really want to beat Dallas. And I don't know if they'll think Garland will swing for them, but it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, there are two observations. One, from the list that I put out on Twitter yesterday of all the local professional teams, the one thing that stuck out to me as I finished writing it was all of these teams, and there isn't a single one of them that is a men's side playing in Dallas proper, which is 100% a stadium issue. That's really all that is.
Yep.
The second observation in doing some research is that people are like, really, Garland? Why would you put it there? Who lives in Garland? I just want to break this down for everybody. The area in which I believe, based on what I'm hearing in the wind of where they're going to build this stadium, it has the same population in a 10-mile radius of Portland, where Kansas City Stadium is, and Salt Lake.
Yeah.
It has the same, crazy, this is going to blow people away. It actually has the same population rate. It has a greater population radius within 20 miles than Frisco.
Yeah.
Than Toyota Stadium. Yes.
Yeah.
Toyota Stadium's total population within 20 miles of the stadium is 2.4. Within where I believe somewhere approximately they're going to put the stadium in Garland, it's 3.2 million people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's not the location. Are people going to care about a lower second division soccer league? And that's the part I can't. And I guess it's all going to be about connecting to the culture and being very specific and marketing to that specific 10, 20 mile radius from around that stadium and just focusing on Garland, Saxe, Murphy, that lower part of Plano, and very, very kind of northeast Dallas.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and listen, we know the reason there's no stadium in Dallas is because Dallas hasn't wanted to pony up for these. FC Dallas is where it is because first they were trying to deal with McKinney and that fell through, and then Frisco wanted to pony up the money. Same with now Garland ponying up the money, Mansfield ponying up the money down there. It's all about that. If you can't get a city that's a partner, it's not going to work. Which is why there's not a team in Dallas. It'll be interesting to see with this whole the current vibe in Dallas of them trying to be like the sports thing and trying to bring teams back to Dallas if eventually they don't try and get one of these teams, and maybe the Dallas Trinity is their best play at this point. But
where would you put a stadium though? That's the problem. The places open for stadiums are the things that I think is going to be the most controversial, which is south of downtown.
Yeah.
Or out in Oak Cliff somewhere, there isn't a feasible area north of 30 that makes sense that would be considered Dallas proper. And I think that's something everybody just is going to have to, deal with.
Well, I could think of like right across the river where
Trinity Groves.
Trinity Groves is. There's a little gentrification happening there. That's where the Rangers put their development club ballpark thing that they got going on there. So, there's certainly probably some availability in there, and maybe even some money from whoever government entities that are into revitalization, perhaps. I mean, what do I know? I mean, I'm not a Dallas Civics guy, but that's the only place I could think of that fits the description at all. Now that most of the areas around downtown Dallas even are all built out, places where there used to be a little space here or there are now all full of stuff,
Yeah. Well, if they can't figure out what to ever do with the old Valley View Mall location, maybe that'd be a kick-ass place for a little soccer-specific facility. So we'll know more about that. I think what is it, on the 19th, the 19th, meeting? Yeah. So we'll know more about it. We'll talk about it more on the next episode of this well thought of podcast. Trinity won on the road last week, so they're doing their thing.
Yeah, good win for them. They played Lexington SC, won 3-2 on the road.
Didn't they come back?
They did. They came back to win. They came back down 2 goals, and they scored 3 goals in 10 minutes.
That's right. It was the same night as the North Texas comeback to win the championship. So it was a good night for Dallas at Fort Worth.
Yeah, that was a happy birthday for me.
Oh, that's right. It was your birthday, Buzz. I'm so sorry I didn't say anything about your birthday.
I know. I felt so sad.
What a kind of crummy podcast host am I that I didn't mention your birthday, Buzz? How old are you now?
54.
All right.
Yeah.
That's a good age.
I'm old.
All right.
I'm a downhill slope. But anyway, they came back 3 goals in 10 minutes. They're the most dangerous team in the league in terms of goal scoring. If they can get their defense short up a little bit, they're going to be one of the favorites, I think.
Did you get your colonoscopy yet?
Not this year, no.
Okay. Well, you should. Hurry up.
Okay.
Don't wait on that. It was a fun night, and I didn't see the game, but it's good to know that what are they in third place now?
Oh goodness, put me on the spot. Let's see. They are in third place. Look at you, knowing your stuff.
I am. Hey man,
on 16 points.
I host an internationally famous soccer radio show. You know, I should know these things.
You do.
I guessed. All right. Very good. Well, congratulations to Trinity, and hopefully I'll make it out to a game here in the next few weeks or
for
so.
sure. Yeah,
I want to. It just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
You know what I want to do? Because there's a DART train stop. Not literally, almost walking distance from my house. I think when I go to a game, I think I'm going to try to do the DART thing and just see how that works.
You should. I think Dan's near that line too. He'd probably do it with you.
He'd meet me there at my stop.
There you go.
All right. Well, let's get into all things Football Club Dallas. By the time people are listening to this, it'll be Friday, November the 15th. And I guess the big question is, Buzz?
Yeah.
Buzz?
Mm-hmm.
When are they going to announce this coaching thing?
Man, that is a good question. The last game was back on October 19th.
It feels like forever ago.
Yeah, October 19th. And that's, we're almost a month from that. So that leads me to 2 conclusions.
Nobody wants the job.
Yeah, that it's you would have thought that if it was Peter Luxon that it would have happened by now. So either it's not him or it was him and something has complicated things potentially. The other candidate that we think we know of is Eric Quill, but we don't have that 100%. We just think he is. His team's been eliminated from the playoffs as of this last weekend. So maybe he's now free to get it over the line, and that is a time frame that fits. But also, Jim Curtin was let go by Philly. And you have to wonder if they didn't maybe pause the process for 10 minutes just to at least call and ask. I mean, I don't think they can get him because I think that Atlanta or St. Louis is going to get him. But if they actually did at least call him, then full credit for at least trying, even though if I think they can't get him. But I think it's. But
have we gotten any insight into who this mysterious third candidate they mentioned in the press conference is?
No, I mean, you and I heard of 1 or 2 names of people that were sort of outside the organization a little bit.
I have the follow up on that, and I can't say who the candidate was other than that it is a person of multiple MLS club head coaching experience that is he's no longer in the running, or may have never actually been in the running. It was so there you go.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to death what the kind of candidates that come to this job, and so I would assume that the third person is, going to fit some of those criteria. But having it taken this long, the third reason it might have taken this long is that person is still busy. Is it an assistant for a team that's still playing?
Yeah,
whether it be. Or a head coach for a team is still playing. You're probably not going to get an MLS guy to make that leap, but you might get a USL guy to make that leap.
Can I speculate?
Yeah, please do. It's what we do in podcasts.
My speculation is that it's between Quill and Luxane, and they were waiting for Quill to get eliminated and available enough to actually have a conversation.
About that,
and so that's what's happening now is that they've just begun the official Eric Quill interviews. And once they feel like they've completed that, then they'll make their decision between him and Peter.
when you include the fact that in the season-ending press conference, which was a couple of days after they lost a month ago, they said quite clearly then, we have 3 candidates. They had talked to people enough via whatever process, whether it be resumes or emails or Zoom calls, that they were down to 3. And they were going to put those 3 in front of Dan or Clark. And now it's a month later. Surely you would have picked your one. Well, even if it was Quill, surely you would have known that and either have gotten permission from their team to talk to him or had that plane ticket ready to go the minute he got eliminated, one or the other. So, I can't help but think, because of the time frame delay, I can't help but think that that the candidate that they're going with is going to be not Luxon, because they would have just done it. That it's going to be somebody, Quill or someone else that was working, or maybe even Curtin coming in at the last minute, that they might have said, oh crap, stop down. Let's double check. Let's at least see if we can get an interview. I have to think they tried, man. I mean, if they just blew that off completely and didn't even try, what would that say about them?
They're realist.
Maybe so. Maybe they just were jaded and know there's no way.
They don't want to pay the long distance phone charge to make the
call. They're not that cheap. They're not that cheap. But surely they would see the same things we did about why Curtin would be ideal here. Just like Eric would be. They have qualities that make a good fit for this organization. The only thing he would be missing would be the connection to them.
Okay.
Curtin doesn't have.
All right. So, Buzz, it's a magical world, and you have been awarded the opportunity to announce and name and decide who the next manager of Dallas is, but it has to be between these 3 people: Peter Luxane, Eric Quill,
not getting me to answer that,
and Jim Curtin.
I'm not doing that, dude.
Why?
Because they're all people that I'm going to have to work with and have conversations with.
Okay, so you're afraid if you say one over the other, somebody may get offended by that?
Yeah, possibly.
Oh, okay.
You think that's a cop-out?
Yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from. It is a cop-out, because I think you can argue. I look, if you run an MLS team and Jim Curtin is available and interested in managing your club, even if and Eric Quill is a qualified candidate, I don't think in any real world you pick Eric Quill over Jim Curtin. And I think Eric Quill is a big enough boy to understand why you would say that.
I'm really tempted to pick Eric, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because Jim Curtin hasn't won anything.
Okay.
And Quill has won every time, basically, up until this New Mexico job when he got them from nothing to first place in like a season and a half. He just hadn't won it yet.
Well, that is a hot sports opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. It's close. It's close.
Jim Curtin's resume is pretty damn impressive, considering the budgetary constraints. He's been making. Oscar Perea is impressed with the level of lemonade Jim Curtin's made out of that lemon roster.
Yeah, I think they're ridiculous for firing him. I think they're crazy. Yeah, listen, I mean, it's razor thin, and if we were to talk about it for the next 4 hours, I probably would go back and forth like 8 times.
Okay.
Which one I would pick. I think they both would be both Eric and Curtin would both be outstanding. I like both of them better than Luxon, just because of the first team coaching experience and the only, like I like a lot of the things about Peter Luxon, but some of the decisions he made when he had the interim gig, I didn't quite like. A couple of them made me kind of go,
Well, they felt like decisions of a guy who hadn't been doing this very much.
Yeah. No, I think if they pick him, I think he'll be fine. He's definitely, that's fine. It's not like oh crap, that's a terrible idea. That's fine. He's much more qualified than Lucci when Lucci got the job, for example. So, my first 2 would be Quill and Curtin, and I would be ecstatic by either one of those guys, because you're right. I think, listen, I had Jim Curtin on my short list to be a U.S. men's national team coach. That's how highly I think of Jim Curtin. I just think really, really highly of Eric Quill too. So it's a tough call.
All right. Well, we'll all sit around here twiddling our thumbs.
Yeah.
And
I mean, if you're going to be FC Dallas and you're going to be cutthroat, do you announce your coach on the 19th, Tuesday?
No, because I don't think they know. I honestly don't think they know yet. I think they're still trying to make sure they feel like they've done their due diligence with Eric, And Eric just got booted, 3 days ago?
Yeah. You think he'll be able to get it in by Thanksgiving?
I think they'll announce it before Thanksgiving, yes, especially because Thanksgiving's so late this month.
Monday or Tuesday? 25th, 26th, something like that?
Yeah, I would be shocked if they let it get into Thanksgiving week, but if it does, that tells me that I would say this. If it goes past Thanksgiving into December, which seems improbable, that tells me that they're actually working on a real list of people. Like maybe it went from 3 to more people or somebody else that they are having to how are we going to pay for this kind of thing?
Yeah. Or all 3 said no.
Or all 3 said, no way, Jose.
You might offer somebody a job and then they change their mind because they got more money to stay, or they just realized that it wasn't right at the end.
Or they were like, wait a second, what do you mean the stadium's half under construction for the next 3 years?
I mean, I'm sure we all either have ourselves or know people that have applied for a job, not 100% sure they wanted the job, and said, I'll worry about it if I get it.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, now give me a week to go talk to my wife and see if this is actually right.
You know, that kind of thing. It's funny, and I think I was the one that said this back at the time after they fired Estevez. I said, watch, Dallas is going to fart around and take too long, and somebody else is going to go nab Eric Quill.
Look how fast Austin moved.
Yeah. I mean,
picking Nico. I mean, there's no reason why, if they didn't have their coach ready to go, it would have been done. The fact that it doesn't is as you say, points at Eric or frankly Curtin, coming available at the last second.
Buzz.
Right?
Buzz.
Yeah.
There is zero chance Jim Curtin is coming to Dallas.
You say 0, I say more than 0.
Okay. All right. Also this week, we did finally get the list of options denied or declined and picked up and loan endings in terms of the roster. I don't think there were any real big surprises. Here are the ones that were declined. Eugene Ansah, don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out. Liam Frazier, Omar Gonzalez, Malik Henry Scott, Korcha, Isaiah Parker, Dante Seeley, and Emma Tuamase.
Yeah. None of those are a surprise. I would have given Malik Henry Scott one more year because he only had 1 year as a homegrown before they dumped him. He's a college-age kid, so that's, tough life in USL MLS Next Pro if you don't make some strides right away. And my guy Parker, of course, I feel bad about that. But
the other part of that list of declined options that sticks out to me is that for a team that is really, really light on center backs, 2 of the people they let go are center backs.
Which ought to tell you something.
Yes, it does tell me something. So go ahead.
Keep in mind just for a second that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players we just talked about them declining. I'm going to bring that back up in a second. Go ahead.
Okay, put a pin in that.
Yeah.
Dear curious listener, picked up options are Antonio Carrera, Herbie Endeley, Logan Farrington, Sebastian Ibiaga, Sam Junkwa, Ziki and Sebeling, and Nkosi Tafari.
Yeah, those were all obvious. I'd like to see Ibi brought back on a lower number, but I understand why you don't want to risk letting him bolt because, to them, not me, to them, he's their number 1 center back. So, pick up the option and now maybe try, from my perspective, maybe try and renegotiate it and do something like, okay, you're going to have this one season at, I think it's 700 something he's going to be on if his escalation follows the order it has in the past. You say okay, we'll give you 2 seasons at 450 for your one at 7 something. So you're going to make more over 2 years. That's the kind of way you can negotiate and bring it down.
Well, I was curious about Ibby's place in terms of how much he gets paid in comparable center back performances in the league. And I couldn't figure out what the best stat to pull a top 10 list was for. So I just picked clearances.
Yeah.
And in the top 10, Ibby is 7th in clearances. And if you look at the players that are from 1 to 10 around him, he is essentially smack dab just below halfway in terms of compensation. Last year, he was 683. Romney for New England was just above him on 721, and Andre for Seattle was just below him at 832. Did you know that Colorado's Maxo is getting paid $1.3 million?
I did not.
Isn't that nuts? And then the Michael guy down in Houston, he's only getting 150. He's a young dude. So but my point being is that no matter how you feel about Ibeagha, good or bad, the amount of money he's getting paid is pretty much commiserate with other players of his.
No, he clearly makes the number that is in a line with how the club views him as their number one center back. His number is not out of line for that.
No.
But my only thing is that he's 32 and he's going to be, getting longer in the tooth. Now he does take care of himself and he is pretty fit. He hasn't had a lot of injury problems. For me, sometimes the decision making, not like particularly passing out of the back, a lot of clearances means a lot of just booting it and not like actually good passing out of the back. For a team that wants to pass out of the back, they have terrible players for passing out of the back. So that's obviously a problem. Very clearly, the club believes, despite they picked up Ibeagha and Junka and Nkosi, they said flat out they want to get better in the back. So short of also going out and getting a center back, which we 100% believe they're going to because they tried to in the last window, something else may give here in terms of these players. Like just bringing in one center back isn't going to make the whole defense better automatically. So we may not be seeing the end of things to happen, perhaps defensively speaking.
And players whose deals were ending, but Dallas is still negotiating with them: Delgado, Jimmy Maurer, and Ruan.
And Yaramendi as well.
Oh, and Yaramendi, sorry.
Yeah, there's a slight difference in the sense that like they have to negotiate with Delgado's other club, either a new loan or the buy. I'm assuming the buy is probably too high and they don't want to do that, is my guess why they wouldn't just pull the trigger. And then, of course, Maurer, Ruan, and Yaramendi are easy in terms of straight negotiation, except that Maurer and Ruan are free agents, whereas because Yaramendi's only been here for a year and a half, the club retains his MLS rights, but he would be free worldwide. He could go somewhere in the league. The real surprise in all of that is Ruan, that they're negotiating with Ruan, because they picked up Endole, who's a right back, and they have Giovanni Jesus as a right back. So the fact that they're negotiating with Ruan is curious, because we talked about like he's on his last big deal here, right?
Yeah, but isn't there something in the wind that Giovanni Jesus isn't doing very well?
That's the thing. Like they've admitted that he had some sort of I don't know what the word, not relapse or
setback is the term.
Setback's the term. They have not clarified what that is. Now we had heard through the grapevine that there was something involving scar tissue, but maybe that's not correct. Maybe there was something more serious, and we don't know this definitively. This club will not talk about injuries at all. Part of that's HIPAA. Part of it is they also don't want to put it out there. But the fact that like for a dude that probably wants like center back kind of money, who's looking at the last big contract of his career, probably, for them to be talking to him when they have a U22 initiative guy at right back and a depth piece at right back makes me worried about Giovanni Jesus, to be frank. I'm now in full-blown panic mode, actually, about that position and that player. Because I don't know why you would try and bring Ruan back if that wasn't the case, right? If you didn't think, because that's a otherwise you don't need him.
Yeah. The only thing about Ruan that freaks me out is is he noted as somebody that can play as a full-on fullback? Isn't he more of a wingback player?
Yeah, he's more of a wingback. I mean, you can use him as a right back. He's a Herbert Endele is the same way. They both qualify as very offensive right backs. Now under Nico Steffes, of course, nobody wanted that. But we don't know what the new coach is going to want. He might want a really offensive outside back. They both fall into like well, I'm not going to say Reggie Cannon because he's a better defender than that, but they're both more fit like your Brian Reynolds style, vertical running, get into the other team's box kind of thing, which was what makes them good wing backs. So, we can't even talk about what system the team's going to play because the front office passes the buck on that completely. And so we won't have any idea about system. And they're signing players without having any idea about system.
Right.
Until the coach is hired. Yeah, I know.
All right. Well, the reason why Buzz asked you to put a pin in that list of players who were all
Yeah.
declined was because it was there was a lot of names in that list. And then today, I suspect the reason why you wanted everybody to keep that in the back of your mind is because of the article you posted today over at thirddegree.net.
Yeah. I have this roster model.
Which, by the way, I just want to say it's incredibly a bummer of an article if you really stop and read it.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. So I have this model that I've used for quite a few years now that breaks the roster down into positional components. Given the current front office's desire for flexibility, it's not as hard coded as it used to be, but this model has worked every single year in terms of like positional needs and the kind of players they go and get. And right now, if you plug in every player under contract and then the 4 they're negotiating with, which is Yaramendi, Ruan, Maurer, and Delgado, that they all said they're talking to, right? You plug in all those guys, you plug in a new center back that they've talked about, then the only thing you have left is a depth center back, maybe Diego Garcia, who will be your 31st player, and then any extra homegrown you sign. So effectively, their roster is done for the year. Like the 2025 roster is effectively fixed. Other than this, we're going to go get a center back. We need a depth piece center back. And then maybe Diego Garcia is an extra player. And that's it.
Yeah, it is bummer. It is a massive bummer to realize that the 2025 roster, in a best case scenario, unless they just start shipping people out a whole, in crates, there is essentially 3 spots for them to fill.
Yeah. And that's, there are some looming questions. Paxton's health, right? Can you actually deliver a center back like you've talked about? And let alone like, how does your first round draft pick fit into this? I wasn't even, unless that guy's a center back, it doesn't fit into the model because I'm already at 32 players for next year.
Yeah.
So like the point is like, you're basically getting the team that ended last season is the team you're getting in 2025 is what I'm saying. Unless they start to ship out players that are currently under contract, they're going to have to start trading people or selling people, or you're getting effectively the exact same team minus a center back. So the change, if the change is coming, unless they somehow get super aggressive and ruthless, you're looking at a very slow change. You're looking at a very small change from last year.
Yeah, and you can totally see how the front office, since they talked themselves into thinking this was a totally doable roster to begin at 24, could go, well, we're not going to be that unlucky this upcoming season. There's no way that happens to us 2 seasons in a row, and they just stick with it and run with it. With some addition, because what they'll say to themselves is, "Oh, we've fixed the defense. We've got it. We've signed a couple of center backs, and Pax is back and he looks healthy, and we re-signed Yaramendi and he's the best." And I could see them doing that. I mean, I think this roster needs a significant overhaul, no matter who the new manager is. But there's just no way that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you bring back Ruan again, you're carrying an extra too many right backs again. You're going to have Jimmy Maurer as your third keeper. That's fine. You bring back Delgado at a position you already have like 8 players on your team that are super versatile that can all play in there. Plus Diego Garcia, who we all think is a fantastic player coming up from North Texas potentially. Delgado might take all his opportunities away. You've already got a couple of homegrowns that are extra. And you might have 1 or 2 more for all we know coming. So it's like they're not leaving themselves any flexibility unless they go create it. And like, we're not seeing any signs that that's happening.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a really good point that is frustrating, because if you think about Diego Garcia, and Buzz, I'm just going to run with your belief that he has a shot at being a really legitimate MLS player.
I do.
The problem is just what you said. He is impeded by Patterson Delgado.
Yeah. And Thomas Pondeka, and maybe Yasir Yaramendi, and maybe Paxton, and maybe Leggett.
Yeah, but okay. But Leggett, Yaramendi, Paxton, all those pieces fit in there. But the Pondeka and specifically the Delgado, a kid they went to South America and got.
Right.
And brought up here because it was more of a business decision, because they felt like they can convert him into a sale and make some money off of him, versus realizing they've got a homegrown talent that costs them next to nothing that they could, push up into the next level and grow him and convert him into a sale at some point and actually probably make more money from him because you didn't spend any money on him,
Exactly. Yeah. It's if you're bringing back these Delgado's pretty young. He is only 2021. I'll give him that. But, you're eating up these big chunks of your depth with these older players, and you're preventing the thing that has made you money. Like, look at the national team game we just watched, full of all these players that came through here and they sold for profit, which is their big thing, right? There's a big operating model. You have to clear that system. You have to let that system work. And if you're going to block it with all these players you've got, you're not going to give yourself the youth opportunity, let alone like actual like improving of other positions. Like if you bring back Yaramendi, you then limit yourself the ability to maybe go out and get a big time central midfielder, because he's going to take that spot. Yeah, it's just the thing that they like, this flexibility in this roster and having these old guys that are all theoretically probably in the prime or the late stages of their career, is just they're locked into all these guys for another season. It's not until a year later from now that again they'll have a whole bunch of contracts coming up, and then they'll have more chances to be flexible. So like if you're doing like a 3-year cycle and you're a coach coming in here, maybe this is part of what's holding the process up, is they come into an interview and they go, here's the 32 players we have for you already lined up, ready to go. And any coach is coming in is like, wait a minute, I don't get the first season. I don't get a chance to change the team at all. You guys are handing me 32 players already, and I have to win with this, and I can't build a team like the way I want to play. Maybe somebody was like, forget that.
Yeah. You said Alara-Mendy, and that made me think of something, because I've always been under the impression that Alara-Mendy's arrival in Dallas was largely tied not to Zanata, but to Estevez.
Yeah.
And because he's out of contract, yet Dallas holds his MLS rights, do you think there's any chance that there are conversations between Dallas and Austin for him?
Oh, sure. I would have.
Well, let me finish the question. If, in fact, there are, what do you think Dallas should get in return from Austin if, in fact, Austin wants to trade for him or buy him or acquire his rights?
I would imagine that it's going to have to be like Tam and Gam. They're like this, because like getting a draft pick really doesn't do anything for you when you've already got academy kids coming through.
Thank you.
Getting like their roster's a bit depleted. I don't know that they have a piece that you're going to get for Yaramendi's rights. This, because it's not his whole contract, it's just his rights.
Right.
So it's like you're probably looking at, well, a draft pick goes for like $50K GAM for a lower one, so it'll probably be more like a $250K GAM. That's probably about all you're going to get. But I would also say that like you can look at all the guys that Nico Estevez liked and wanted to bring here, and consider that some of them might be guys that he might call about. He might be interested in Areola or Leggett, or Farrington was one of his big finds out of college. I'm not saying you do these guys. I'm just saying that like some of them have different value prices than others. Like Yaramendi's rights would be a very low one, but maybe some of these other guys might be one that they would like. Remember, he and the front office paid $2 million in GAM to get Paul in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if he really still loves Paul, maybe there's a way that they actually might give you something for him, just as one hypothetical example. And so it's really weird that your former coach, who was instrumental in building this roster as it is now at a rival team and might want some of those same pieces, perhaps.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Buzz, I don't know, man. It's a weird time.
It is.
There's nothing and everything going on at the same time, it feels like.
Yeah, I will say the weirdest thing about this roster that I just did today is usually when I do this, there's like 10 holes in it of like, here's a hole, and here's the kind of player that can fill that hole. And it might be a draft pick, or might be a young DP, or a young U22 initiative, or maybe go get a TAM signing. This time there's like one.
No,
or two. Depth center back two. That's it.
And I think that is the most damning implication of how Zanata has been doing this roster building, because when I look at this roster, it looks like to me a purposeful construction of a group of players that they thought were like a winning combination.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because exactly for the reason that you said, the way the roster is constructed now, there aren't a lot of holes.
Yeah. Oh, this thing is almost completely complete, other than, like we've talked about, a draft pick, and then the two, a starting level center back, and one deep depth piece, which almost doesn't even matter. Other than that, this roster is complete.
Yeah.
So it's like there's no moves to be done here. If you're a coach coming in, the only way you can go get you're only going to be way you're going to be able to impact this roster is you're going to have to go to the front office and say, you got to get rid of these 5 or 6 guys, and they're all already under contract. So you can only trade them or sell them to somebody else in the league, really. And
the other hard reality is they don't have the option unless they get rid of somebody. It's not like there's a big name or a significant DP signing coming. They made that last year with Musa.
Yeah, unless you sell Jesus, then you can.
Right.
But it's like, you're looking at a team that the money is basically already spent, right? So it's like the only way to create gaps to add players is to move out money, and it's just, you can imagine any coach that they're talking to might be sitting there going, boy, how am I going to make this team any better? And you do have things like you could put a player on injured reserve for the season. If, for example, Paxton turns out to not be good, but if he's good, obviously he's a very good player. So if he's healthy, you're not doing that. You have maybe Giovanni Jesus is bad enough, but then Giovanni Jesus has a U22 initiative. Is a very small cap number. So unless something happens we don't know about, the season-ending IR probably can't help you. Your next option is the buyout. So you still have the capability of, in addition to selling a DP, you could buy out any one of these high-priced players, but it's going to be hard for them to swallow buying out a player that's still useful. Like we've seen cases where they've bought out a Frank O'Hara who wasn't particularly useful. Like if they'd have been stuck with Eugene Ansah, I could have seen them buying that guy out. But if you're going to try and buy out a Paul Arriola or a Sebastian Lletget, man, those guys are still pretty useful players. It's going to be really hard for them to convince Clark Hunt to eat $1 or $2 million on a player that's still pretty dang good. Maybe just isn't $2 million good. So they really have completely handcuffed themselves in the ability to do anything unless they just go out and get super aggressive about trying to move pieces and trying to make some holes. And that's where we are. They have December and January basically, and camp opens middle of January probably. Right. Mm-hmm. So you really have 2 months. You have in the back half of this month has got Thanksgiving holidays in it. And then December has Christmas holidays. I shouldn't say Christmas, the end of the year, whatever you celebrate, Hanukkah, Christmas, whatever it is, they have that holiday. That's going to eat up, those 2 holidays eat up 2 weeks out of your 2 months that you have. So you have 6 weeks to do all this, basically. So, it's tough sitting there looking at that roster and thinking to yourself, man, this is pretty much the same team. Yeah. Going to add a center back and that's it. And then we're going. Because anybody else like this Diego Garcia's, this deep depth piece, none of that's playing, right? Those guys aren't playing. The dudes at the top of the roster are not changing, and that's what matters. Unless, of course, they just reject Iramendi and Ruan and then Delgado, and then you have some room. Then you can do some things, but they're trying to get those guys.
Like I said, it was a bummer of an article.
Yeah.
All right.
It was painful to write.
So here is the bet. Here's the question as we wrap this up. By the time we record the next episode next week, will they have made an announcement on a coach? And will we have heard anything? How about not even name a coach? Will we have gotten an update of any sort?
Oh, there'll be something that'll happen. The 27th is when all the moves start happening. I believe that's when the 1-day trade deadline is. So you won't have anything by then, but I bet you'll have a coach something by the end of next week. Somebody else will report something, or we'll have a press conference announced for Friday or something like that. I think you will have something.
All right. Very good.
I hope you will. Because if they go into Thanksgiving without it, man, you didn't hear me shaking my head there because I was. It's a visual medium.
I think we all are shaking. Yeah. We're all collectively shaking our heads.
Yeah, boy, I really hope it's next week because honestly, like the week after that is when all the moves start happening. Minus Thanksgiving, it's like all the 1 day this is and the reentry that's and the expansion this is, that all comes within like a 2 or 3 week run. of your 6 weeks you have before you open camp mid-January.
Yeah.
So.
Well, if there's nothing happens, we'll spend the next episode talking about the new USLC team in Garland.
Yeah, we would definitely have that to talk about. When is the European window open, by the way? Speaking of players being sold or something.
Oh, that isn't until the holidays, like January 1, I think, or something like that.
So not until January. Oh, man.
Yeah,
so we might be
late December, early January. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you're talking about like needing to sell somebody to make room, you might be heading into like 2 weeks from camp before you can even sell somebody.
Yeah, you'd like to think that if they are going to sell Jesus, that is an ongoing negotiation and conversation and bargaining deal that's been going on for a while now, so that when the window does, I mean, they could announce it before then. He just can't actually leave until the window.
Oh, can they? Okay, yeah. January 1st.
I mean, you could pre-do it, and then solidify it and sign all the paperwork the minute the window opens. But you're not. I don't believe, unless there's some I'm not aware of, there's nothing keeping anybody from at least having conversations at this point.
Yeah, especially because Jesus or anybody else on this team the season's over.
Yeah, right.
And their contracts all expire, if they do expire, December 31st, at midnight or whatever. So
yeah, for sure. There is a weird scenario where the 2025 season kicks off and neither Jesus Ferreira or Paxton Pomacall is on this team. And it takes me a minute to kind of get over that idea, but
there's also a weird scenario where it's the exact same team that finished 2024. I mean, literally, like if they don't get a center back, it can literally be the exact same team as the end of the season, minus a couple of dead weights.
Happy birthday,
and
Buzz.
Some more kids. Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Very good. Well, we missed you tonight, Dan. Hope you come back next week.
I hope he does too.
I'm sure he will.
We missed his jovial chuckles and laughing at all the Americans.
Very good. Anything else, Buzzard?
No, that's it. I think that's all I had on my list. I'm sure there's something I forgot, but
we'll do it next week.
Yeah, we got a long winter.
We need filler. Very good. All right, buddy. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, and thank you, FC Dallas Curious Fan. We will, I promise, talk to you next week on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
Sell somebody.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.